Stocks up, oil down. Does the market really think that the end of the Russian-Ukraine war is in sight? On Wednesday, Zelensky said that peace talks with Russia were beginning to sound more realistic. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said there was some hope for compromise. Do you believe them? Or is this propaganda? What should you be doing with your money right now? Hi, I'm David Wu, a former Wall Street macro strategist with a 20-year track record in making actionable predictions about the big stories shaping our world. Welcome to part 1 of Money Game, where I take on groupthink, propaganda, and conspiracy theories in my critical analysis of markets, economics, and politics. We all know that there is a powerful disinformation war going on alongside the kinetic war. Though deception is a legitimate tactic in wars, it does make it difficult to know what really is going on. In this video, I will share with you my thoughts on what may be going on behind the scenes. According to the Slovenian Prime Minister, who visited Kiev on Tuesday, Zelensky is willing to change the country's constitution to drop hopes of NATO membership. Should we assume that Zelensky's new stance in the negotiations with the Russians is sincere? 2 weeks ago, I talked about neutrality for Ukraine as an obvious solution to the crisis and the basis for Russian optimism. But that was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks are an eternity in this war. Over the past 2 weeks, Russia has wreaked massive destruction, killed thousands and displaced millions. If Zelensky were to accept Russia's demand for neutrality now, something he could have done a month ago, 3 months ago, a year ago to prevent the war, how could he justify to himself and to his own people the destruction of his country and the deaths of so many of his compatriots over the past few weeks? I'm inclined to think that if Zelensky, into the 4th week of this war, were to suddenly agree to neutrality, it will be the end of his political career. Moreover, this war will go into the history book as one of the most pointless, dumb wars ever fought, and Zelensky as a clueless leader. And what about the US? If Ukraine adopts neutrality at this point, it will completely discredit US foreign policy. After all, Washington is Zelensky's biggest backer. Russia's victory over Ukraine would be Russia's victory over the US. All the money and resources that the US has been pouring into Ukraine over the last 8 years would have been for nothing.
Today we're going to discuss how the US can continue to support Ukraine.
It will be an invitation to America's other adversaries to challenge the US rules-based order. I want to believe that Washington understands what is at stake and that Biden knows that there is no turning back without the US becoming the laughing stock of the rest of the world. This is why I think the stock market rally on news that negotiations are making progress is a little premature. It seems to me that from a strategic standpoint, the US has a strong incentive to play for time, to wear down the Russians, both economically and militarily. Time is on America's side. The longer this war drags out, the more likely the US will finish on top. Indeed, we should assume that the $14 billion of new aid for Ukraine signed into law by Biden last week is meant to keep the Ukrainians going as long as possible. If I'm right, then the talk of neutrality by Zelensky should be viewed as a tactic to buy time, slow down the Russian advance, and allow American aid to reach Ukraine. Unless we assume that Zelensky and Biden made a colossal error of judgment in pursuing this war, it makes no sense that this conflict will end soon, as it's become too costly to give up at this point. In the recent months, I have developed together with Rewe, a Toronto-based online survey technology firm, 2 surveys that support my view that this conflict will not end anytime soon. The first survey is a military conflict risk survey designed to measure on a continuous real-time basis the collective perception of military conflict intensification from citizens in 5 major geopolitical conflict regions: Russia, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, Pakistan, India, South Korea, North Korea, and Iran and Israel. Our survey shows that the majority of the survey's respondents in Ukraine are in favor of Zelensky's approach to the conflict, with 50% strongly in favor. In Russia, 38% of respondents are in favor of Putin's approach to the conflict versus only 28% of the respondents who are against. These numbers have been fairly stable since the start of the war. In other words, the sanctions and international condemnation do not appear to be having a tangible impact on shaping Russian public opinion. At least not yet. Of course, we cannot know for sure that people are telling the truth. However, our survey leverages Rewe's proprietary random domain intercept online survey technology that is totally anonymous and has a track record of getting responses from people who don't typically answer opinion polls. To elicit a truthful response, we also asked the survey respondents what people in their community think about Putin's approach to the war. U.S. presidential election polls have long shown that people are more likely to reveal what they really think in responding to this question when it concerns not themselves, but their neighbors. Interestingly, we don't find a very big difference between the answers to the two questions in terms of the support for Putin in Russia. This gives me even more confidence in the survey's finding. So Putin still enjoys strong support at home. Whether this is because of successful war propaganda or because the Russian public actually agrees with him, we cannot know. But then again, the same can be said about the strong support that Zelensky continues to enjoy in Ukraine. It is reasonable to think that as long as both leaders have backing from their people, the war will continue. The second survey that I developed with Rewe provides some clues as to why the sanctions have not had a more pronounced impact on support for Putin. Our Cold War II survey shows that while 39% of our Russian respondents think that inflation in Russia is heading much higher, 41% of American respondents think the same about inflation in the US. The fact that inflationary pressure is not being felt more broadly in Russia suggests that the impact of the sanctions have not yet been fully felt. Our survey also shows that 42% of Russians increased their spending over the previous month versus just 34% of Americans. My reading of this is that Russian consumers are spending, perhaps hoarding, in anticipation of shortage down the road, while this last is providing a short-term boost to the Russian economy. Time is on the side of Americans, but Putin is not yet under pressure at home to change course. The most likely path forward is the continuation of the conflict. Whether you like it or not, things are going to get worse before they get better, possibly much worse. This is a dress rehearsal for Cold War II, a battle between globalism and nationalism that neither side can afford to lose. If you got something out of this program, please hit like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to watch the second part of this video in which I discuss my investment strategy or learn more about the Unbound Rewe indices of surveys, please come visit us at davidwunbound.com.